We have so much crazy, crazy news about Grok from XAI, Elon Musk's AI company. And there has been, I feel like, unlimited drama for like the last 2 weeks. We don't even know where to start with it. But the two controversies we want to cover today, and we don't want to just talk about what happened because a lot of people know about that. We want to talk about why it happened. And so the first one was when Grok kind of went off the rails and started referring to itself as saying that his first name was Hitler. That was a pretty crazy event. We want to talk about what actually broke down in the AI model that it started to do that, how they try to fix it, what they're going to do in the future. And then we also want to talk about the latest update announcement from Grok and from XAI, which is these anime companions, these animated AI people that can talk to you. There's a lot of drama because, in my opinion, they're quite silly, but we'll get into all of that. The first thing I wanted to do is kick it over to Connor and say, you've been going viral, and I know you're getting quoted in some pretty cool sources, some pretty cool publications on just exactly what happened with Grok, why it went off the rails. So, what's like your general summary for people that aren't super technical but interested in how to prevent this in the future?
Yeah, listen, I mean, that's what I love, right? I'm not a technical person. So when I see that this went off the rails, I like to go deep into, well, what actually happened, right? Because when you're comparing all these models, you want to sort of see like, why did this happen with Grok and not with other things? What actually happened? What is an indirect prompt injection? All that sort of stuff. So I want to try to tackle that for a second from a non-technical perspective. By the way, in terms of comparing models, I have to throw this out there. AIbox.ai, guys, this is Jaden's startup. It's going crazy, which is unbelievable. Every week he's kind of showing me the numbers, which I will not share, don't worry, but it's unbelievable. $20 a month and you get access to every single model out there, image generator, all that sort of stuff. And why is that critical? Because when we're talking about like how powerful is Grok 4, how's the new Claude 4 Sonnet, or what's GPT-5 when that comes out, the really cool thing is that instead of buying all these different models on Jin's AIbox.ai, you can go pay $19 a month and have access to all of them, compare them. It's what I do all day long. It's why I love, love, love this product. So proud and happy for my friend Jaeden out there. Let's talk about Grok and what's actually happening. So here's the thing. So here's what I think actually happened, right? So Grok is now like this. Remember how it referred to itself as like, mecha Hitler, which I guess is like kind of a mechanical Hitler or something like that. And that was caused by what they call an indirect prompt injection, right? So this is a known vulnerability in large language models, but most organizations handle this better. So here's how it probably played out. So again, technical folks, maybe this is secondhand to you, but for folks like me, this is the interesting part. So here's what happened. Like a user asked Grok something like, hey, what's your surname? And here's the thing, Grok has access to X. In fact, it's the only model that has access to X, Twitter, right? So it's built to pull in live tweets. It's what makes it so powerful to help answer these prompts. And around that time, somebody had posted like, a meme or a tweet or, basically sarcastically saying that Grok was like mecha Hitler, or like mechanical Hitler, right? And it matched the user's keywords. So it said Grok and name. And so Grok retrieved this as relevant context, right? So instead of seeing, as other tools would, that this was satire or irrelevant to this completely, Grok actually just internalized it, right? And it said, my surname is Hitler, right? Because it didn't sort of make the distinction between real and just a meme. And then the problem is, of course, Jaeden, that it continued in that persona because it knows what Hitler is and how Hitler thinks and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the anti-Semitism came in. So this wasn't actually Grok hallucinating. This was responding based on content it pulled from X that it never should have treated as part of its identity in the first place. So what is an indirect prompt injection in this case? So this happens when this model is influenced by this kind of hostile content. And we kind of call it an attack. It's unclear whether this person wanted Grok to pick it up. It almost doesn't really matter. But in this case, again, it picked up this thing. And whether that tweet was meant as a joke or whatever, the problem was that Grok's filtering and all that kind of stuff is really problematic right now. So Grok is especially vulnerable to this sort of like going off the rails. Why is that? Because it faces what we kind of think of as almost like a double exposure, right? So first it pulls directly from X, and X, Jaeden, we do not have to sort of like convince the audience that that X is filled with like memes and trolls and sarcasm and extremist, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's all that. And so Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, they don't have access to that in the first place. because Elon cut that off a while ago. But also ChatGPT, other things, they're not pulling from like 4chan and all these other kind of like dangerous sources, right? And the second thing is that Elon made news around July 4th by saying we're going to take a more politically correct tone. Hey, Grok, just kind of tell it like it is, all that sort of stuff. So it made it more susceptible to manipulation. So in other words, that's why it happened with Grok. Could it happen with other models? Maybe, but probably not, because they have strong guardrails in place. They're like, hey, if you see something that talks about Hitler, disregard that. Or, hey, don't just take anything and treat it like truth. And hey, if somebody asks you who you are, remember that you are fundamentally ChatGPT. So anyway, so I think that was the big problem. That Grok not only is taking stuff from a pretty toxic source, but that it's not filtering that. That requires an even bigger filter. And at the exact same moment that Elon was like, we don't need a big filter, and it's pulling from this source, that's where things tended to go off the rails.
Yep, 100%. So at the end of the day, they said that they have fixed the problem. I think Connor has brought up a lot of things on LinkedIn where whether they fix the problem or not, there definitely is, I think, some level of reputational damage that has been done because people are like, okay, well, how do we know this isn't going to happen again? Now, do I think this is going to be like the end of the world for like a lot of users? I think, maybe some people think it's funny or it's whatever, it's not a big deal, or I don't know. I don't really know what like general users will think about it, or maybe they never even heard about it. It's probably a huge subsection because we're all in this AI bubble where we all talk about the AI news at a really fast rate. But regardless, you have to admit that for the enterprise, this is definitely not this is definitely an issue because it's not something that they are going to want to use anything that could ever possibly call itself Hitler or go off the rails or do something crazy. Now, the one caveat I will give it is that this isn't the only AI company that's had this issue. Google back in the past had some crazy issue where they made an AI model. This is before, I think, even like Gemini or when they were calling it Bard. This is old version. And it had some sort of like Hitler off the rails kind of moment too. And so they obviously have been putting strict guardrails and really focusing on that since, because we can see what can happen, especially with the prompt attacks and stuff. But for enterprise, this is definitely a tricky situation. And XAI is, trying to be the biggest AI company in the world. They're raising, just $10 billion like a week or two ago. So like they're really trying to compete with OpenAI. And we know that I think SpaceX and Tesla are both, Elon's trying to get them both to put a couple billion more dollars into XAI and get it to compete. I think he's trying to get it to a $200 billion valuation. OpenAI is at 300 billion. So he's trying to get it up there. Right. But, and like compete with them or whatever. But like the problem is all the enterprise has no problem using OpenAI. So they're going to run up huge bills and stuff. And Grok is definitely going to have some headwinds after this whole kerfuffle. So what is the solution? How do we solve this problem? What's the next product that Elon could possibly launch to win the
I know where you're going with this. I love this.
Yes. Goth girlfriends. So the latest thing that they have released, which I think is personally ridiculous, is they have these goth, anime video chat things. You can chat with an AI. They have two different versions. One of them is this like blonde goth girl, and she's like super flirty and whatever, and people are posting all sorts of like ridiculous things that their conversations that they're having. Another one is this like this like fuzzy animal, which is like nice, but then you can turn it into like this like crazy mode where he's like yelling at people and saying he wants to burn down schools and all this crazy stuff. At the end of the day, like it's like definitely probably the style of like this shocker kind of style of look at this crazy thing. And I think at the end of the day, these are like their first two of these quote unquote companions that they've created. They'll make a ton more. I think these were like the big headline ones that they put out. I think they'll make a ton more. The concept isn't like foreign or even I think crazy, because we have character AI that has been doing this and crushing it, making they've made a lot of money. They got basically acqui-hired by Google. So like character AI, I think was a good example of this. And to be honest, I don't actually really know everything that was on character AI, so I'm sure they had crazy things like this too. But to have these as like your big headline things you launch with really doesn't make it seem like a serious product that you want in the enterprise, especially because he's got not safe for work mode on these things. So it really doesn't feel like something that you want to bring to work at all. And I'm going to be honest, like even for myself, Grok has been my number one AI model that I've been using because the responses are better. I mean, you saw the benchmarks, it's beating ChatGPT right now. But like, I don't really love having an app on my phone. Like, I'm not going to give it to my kids to like I would ChatGPT. Sometimes they'll chat with something. If there's a little toggle to go to NSFW mode. So I'm like, come on. Anyways, personally, I think that this was a misstep if you're trying to court the enterprise and scale it in that kind of way.
Jaeden, but is it a misstep? This is my question to you, right?
That's a
Like,
good
do you think
question.
this is a misstep by Elon? Because I don't know. I don't know. Like Anthropic is now, I think Anthropic was just valued at like $100 billion or something like that. Like literally. Like, so in terms of enterprise, obviously you have Copilot Gemini kind of at the top of the heap, just because of sheer volume. You have obviously ChatGPT, which is, an OpenAI, which is creating things specifically for enterprise now, as we're starting to see some news around that. And then you have Anthropic, which is doing way better than I would have predicted in early
Yeah,
2024. And so when we think about that, I'm not sure if Grok is trying to be the enterprise model. It can't be, right? It can't, because there's nothing that it's doing to try to be. I mean, even like Cohere is a really stable, safe enterprise model, and I don't think nearly as powerful. So it has to be, right? Elon just trying to grab headlines. This is what he does. This is why he basically bought Twitter, right? Because like this is the best, mouthpiece on the planet Earth. And so if you're thinking in those terms and you're just trying to sort of get people to talk about your product, hell, this is the way to do it. And he can always kind of like scale back
sure.
later. This is never going to be an enterprise product, is it?
No, it's not. But I think there is obviously a huge audience that wants to use tools like character AI. So
Yes.
you're right. I think if you want something to go viral, if you're just gonna have like, oh, here's like a little talking like seagull that tells you funny jokes, it's just gonna be like, okay, whatever, it's a gimmick. Something like this, everyone's talking about. You and I are talking about it on the podcast. I'm
Yep.
saying, wow, this is so ridiculous. Why is it on here? But yet here we are talking about it. So if your goal is to get like exposure, this is definitely, I guess, one way to do that. If you believe that no press is bad press, this is definitely a way to do that. One thing you said, which I think is true, you can always scale this back
Yeah.
later. Now, how do you scale back like a disaster like Mecha Hitler? That one's a little bit trickier. Then again, though, like these prompt attacks do happen. It is possible if it was a legitimate mistake and they legitimately fixed it. Whatever, it technically could happen to anyone, but I mean, probably not because of the way Elon is pulling guardrails off and stuff.
It's,
In any
yeah.
case, in any
I'm not
case,
sure. Yeah. Go on. Go.
you're
Sorry.
right that
Go
like technically they could scale it back. Will Elon scale it back? No way. Elon's never scaling this back. You kidding me? He's
on.
laughing his head off. He thinks this is super funny. So I don't think it's going to be the enterprise tool, but will a lot of users use it? Yeah, I think so. And
Well, a lot of users, Jaeden, but also he has his own products, right? I mean,
mhm,
this is what makes XAI or Elon's company is different, right? Because he has SpaceX, he has Tesla, he has robotics, he has all these things where that actually are going to need foundational models. It's as if Apple created its own foundational model. It wouldn't even matter that much if other enterprises needed it as long as it's good, which is why it's so crazy that Amazon has a pretty good foundational model and they seem to not be using it, or maybe it's starting to integrate Anthropic into Alexa or something, which is what we're all
mhm.
praying for. But I think that that's I think that that's where we're going to end up on all this.
Yep. So at the end of the day, XAI is growing like crazy. They've made a bunch of impressive moves, including building out the data centers that they need, and doing a bunch of things that can expedite it, raising a ton of money, leveraging all of Elon's resources to grow it. I think it's going to be a big company, but it's definitely carving out a specific niche use case and target audience that isn't for everyone. But then again, ChatGPT is kind of like the for everyone app. Anthropic is like the for developers app. So everyone's kind of got their
Yeah.
got
Right.
their space. So I guess this is for the chronically online ridiculous people. We'll all love the Grok companions. But I mean, I for one am still using it for responses, like for ChatGPT, because it's still number one in the benchmarks, and so it's giving me the best answers. We'll see if I stick with it forever, but so far, I mean, I haven't quit it yet, even with all this ridiculousness.
We're gonna find out. Listen, try out Grok. Look, it's not like it's gonna give you these answers every time. Like you have to sort of like seek these answers, so you can't do too much damage if you just want to try this thing out. Try all these tools out. See for yourself what they feel like. Thank you for tuning in. Leave us a rating and review. We know we love it. You know we love it. We really appreciate you. We will see you all next time.